When the earth and all its people quake, it is I who hold its pillars firm. Welcome to Brighton Unitarian Church and to our service this morning. We begin in our traditional way by lighting our chalice. We call forth the life of our faith by igniting our chalice. Thank you. This spark of new beginnings invites us into a sacred space to reflect where we have been and where we are going. Even knowing that this particular flame will intentionally end with our ritual of extinguishing at the end of our service, we fear not that end, for we know with our brave hearts that from every ending of our lives we are set forth to make a new beginning. May the light of this chalice enter your minds and your hearts on this Sunday morning. Let's come together in a moment of prayer. During this service, I may use the word God. If that doesn't work for you, please find something that's alternative. It could be universal light or spirit or mystery, or I have no idea. Divine light, God of all love, the mystery of your presence, we come together this morning, some of us for the first time in this church, and some seasoned Unitarians, and then all of us in between. We come together in this sacred space for a moment to discover, to reignite, to remind us of the ever-present light and hope in this world. We may come renewed, we may come tired or broken, strong, confused, but we come all the same to a space where we can make a commitment to all that is true and real. And as we come nearer to what we call Spirit or God, we pray to reveal ourselves in an ever-loving light of hope and truth. Amen and blessed be. Good morning, everyone. For those of you here in the church and those of you who are online at home now, or maybe you might be online later in the week, or you might stumble across us in weeks to come, you're very, very welcome. My name is Jennifer. I'm the minister here at Brighton. And our service today is about pillars. Yep, pillars. In case you haven't noticed, we've got 4 of them outside. And if you haven't noticed, I suggest you go and have a look later on in the service. But whether you're here, if you come here for the first time today and have no idea what you've stumbled into, I really hope that you can sit back and take what you like, leave the rest, be curious about who we are as Unitarians here. And also join us after the service for a cup of tea. There is a large quantity of cake. So that's, if nothing else, that'll keep you in your seat for another hour. And, welcome to everybody, whatever state you come in this morning. Just use this time as a space to hopefully renew. So, in this service, we will be exploring pillars. What they mean in terms of faith and what they mean in terms of our faith here at the Unitarians. And in the second half of the service, we'll have a bit of time to reflect on what state our own personal pillars are, our mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical pillars. Are they in good stead and strong, or are they feeling a bit tired or a bit like the Leaning Tower or a bit crumbly? I'm aware we're about to enter into the silly season, so I think we need our pillars to be as strong as possible. And I invite you throughout the service to just keep an open mind about the vision of the 4 pillars that are outside this church. But for now, let's sing our first hymn. It's 174 in the Green Book. There are a number of verses, so we're just going to sing the first 3, Stuart, if that's okay. So 174. Once upon a time, I do like starting with those words. Once upon a time, there were a group of dissenters. Now, some of you in the church will know this story, and some of you don't, so I'm just going to do a précis. There were a bunch of dissenters, people who were in the Baptist church in Brighton in sort of 1860, 1817, and they were looking for something different. To cut a long story short, they ended up purchasing this piece of land from the Preach Regent and built this church. A church was erected to basically a new and emerging and questioning faith. And I hope that in this service this morning, for those of you who are new to Unitarian, you might get a little flavour. For those of you that know it well, you can share it with others. But the church itself, when the architect made the drawings, it was a nod to the Greek temple of Theseus in Athens. And that's why we have this incredible portico in the front and these 4 pillars. There are a lot more pillars in the one in Athens. Unitarianism has come a long way from what was being preached in the pulpit in the 1820s, and yet the basis was about transformation, something new, a space to calm and question, to see things in a different way. In 1819, a man named William Channing gave a sermon about Unitarian Christianity. And it really was the foundation of the beginnings of this faith and what we believed and didn't believe. He talked about the unity of God, and he was also brave enough to reject the Trinity and the doctrine of original sin. He talked about the importance of reason and understanding when reading the Bible, the importance of human nature in discovering religious truth, and a God as having a loving and parental nature. So it really was quite radical. Perhaps the pillars outside of this church were based on those 4 reflections. Or maybe they were based on the early church and the Bible. Now, for those of you who are new here, we don't talk about the Bible very often, but we are going to talk about it very briefly today. So bear with me. But the whole word about pillars is, you can see it, there's a thread through it in the Bible. And it carries various meanings and spiritual significance. And some of you who have maybe come from another faith, maybe even studied the Bible as children and as young people, will know some of these stories. But we see it there as a picture of a strong and sturdy structure. It provides support and stability. They're mentioned in important events or locations, and they serve as reminders of the sort of strength of God, whatever that was at that time, and the presence of that spirit among people. In a spiritual sense, they can represent our commitment and our faith. Just as they provide a support to the building, our faith serves as a sound foundation for our spiritual lives. For those of you who've been around a little while, in 2018, we had this review of the church, this quinquennial review that looks at the architecture and how safe it is. And the portico at the front apparently was about to collapse, and the pillars were looking quite crumbly. And it was one of those moments of, oh my goodness, if that collapses, then we're going to lose the whole front of the church. Needless to say, that didn't happen. A large quantity of money from Heritage Lottery and other such places, and amazing work by this congregation helped to almost rebuild the front of the church. The pillars now they need regular upkeep. They get chipped and they need repainted and so forth. But I think they're pretty solid. We'll find out next year when we have another quinquennial review. And here's hoping that they'll go, yeah, it's all fine. This bit's grumbling, but that's totally fine. But the sort of meaning of the pillars in the Bible gives us a sort of deeper insight into those spiritual meanings behind a physical structure. But they don't just have physical meaning in Christian faith, or even perhaps in our faith as we look at the building that's been given to us. And it's around in lots of faiths. If you look at Muslim, they have the pillars of faith, their pillar of fasting, their profession of their faith, their almsgiving, their pilgrimage. In the Catholic Church, you have the creed and the prayer and the mass and the sacraments. In Judaism, it's also there. They have 7 pillars. And actually, if you do a little bit of research, which is what I have been doing, depending on which branch of Christianity, you can go from 3 to 12 pillars. So take your pick. We've just got 4. In the faith, the Baha'i faith, it's oneness, love, kindness, and humility. So this thing about a pillar, a sort of strong, standing, firm foundation, is a really important thing for us to think about. And whilst we have this visual thing outside of our church, maybe we can take that to sort of think in this service about what those 4 pillars mean in our faith and how we do our faith here in Brighton. But hold on to that thought, because we're going to sing again. And we're going to sing number 79 in the Purple Book, In This Time on Earth We Are Given. How many verses is there? Okay, we'll sing both too then. There's a line in that hymn about seeking nearer heaven. Well, whether we believe in heaven or not, the higher realm. That's also a thing about pillars. They stretch between the earthly plane and the holy spiritual sky plane. So they're also that sense of spanning those two. So we go back to those early writings of Channing. And Unitarianism, of course, has not been static. That's one of the brilliant things about it, is that it changes in time. It molds, it thinks, it discusses, it reasons, and it changes. And we do have 4 pillars. They're not called pillars, but for the sake of argument for today, we're going to call them pillars. They're actually called principles, but hey. And some of you may know these really well, and others of you who've maybe just walked into the building today may not. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice, compassion in human relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Ooh, that's the 4th one. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Now, we could spend multiple services on each one of those, so we are doing a quick, swift overview. And how do we do those? Well, we're encouraged to promote a free and inquiring religion through the worship of God, or whatever God is to you, the celebration of life, the service of humanity and respect for all creation, and the upholding of the liberal Christian tradition. It's a big ask. I remember when I first came here and someone said, "Oh, we don't have a dogma." I was like, great. I spent my life trying to get away from it, but we do have principles. And what I was told when I first started coming by the previous minister here was it takes a great degree of discernment to follow those principles, because we have to ask and question and think. We're not being told this is what to believe. And that has been my experience. I went to Greece when I was in my early 20s, when I was doing one of those let's go travel around the world thing and become enlightened. And I went to the Parthenon and I saw this architecture, these beautiful pillars. I was told about the structure of them, and through storms and wars and fires and earthquakes, they had remained solid, even through the pollution of Athens, and millions of people, it still stood. I couldn't help but be amazed that these pillars continued to stand, erect and beautiful, faithfully supporting the building, even though thousands of years had passed. Some of you know that I've had some time on my hands recently being at home recovering, and I found those images way back from in my early 20s, and it got me thinking about the pillars of this church. So there is rhyme and reason to this service this morning. And our pillars have been standing for a really short time compared to, the Parthenon in Athens. But still, they have this majestic quality. Quite a lot of people who don't know or have never been into this church will go, "Oh yeah, I know that building. It's got the 4 pillars opposite the mash tun." That's what we're known as. 4 pillars opposite the pub. So, there is a sense that we're known, even though we're not perhaps known as well inside, we're known for our facade. So what does it mean for the likes of us at Brighton Unitarian Church, these 4 pillars? The inherent worth and dignity of every person. That's a big ask. Everybody. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, not just who walks through this door, but every person. That's quite a big pillar. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Is that just for all the people that walk inside this church and may use it as a meeting place, a hiring place, a sanctuary, a place to sleep outside in the portico, to drink? Does it stretch to everyone? The third pillar, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation. Do we really do that? Do we really accept everyone? I like to think that we do. You know, we talk about the doors of this church being open and people could come in and find a space. But I was in a meeting recently with Liz Slade, who's the sort of the head honcho of the General Assembly of Unitarianism, and we broached the subject of the recent resignation of Justin Welby. Now, he was a massive representative for the Christian church, and he took collective and personal responsibility for the failure of the church to protect its congregation from abuse. We have to be careful to acknowledge that the pillars stand at the testament of our faith over 200 years and our promises. But one of those pillared promises is encouragement of growth in our congregation and acceptance of others. Not without boundaries, I say. And the fourth, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. People come to Unitarian Church with many faiths, many experiences, some very difficult experiences of faith before they come here. They may have had difficult experiences within the Unitarian tradition. Some come here going, can I be a Unitarian and a Buddhist and a Christian? We're all searching for truth and meaning. That means that the person who's sitting next to you right now may have a very different belief. Are the pillars of this church strong enough to hold all of that? When I began my training as an interfaith minister some 13 years ago, I had a lot of healing to do in terms of my own upbringing in the Church of England. And when I started to come to this church, I ignored the last few words that is in one of our statements, which is upholding the liberal Christian tradition. I just fell off. I was just like, oh, I'm a Unitarian. Just ignore that part. And what I found through my training and visiting and talking to other ministers is that what we do at Brighton is very diverse compared to what they do somewhere else. I would say we're quite left-leaning in terms of our faith. But we have a place. Our pillars have a place, as does Mill Hill Chapel in Leeds, as does Gethley Otning Chapel in Wales, and throughout the country. So that free search for truth and meaning. Some of you may be coming here new, going, what's she talking about? What are they talking about? What is this Unitarian thing? You may have been coming for 20 odd years and still having that question. What is this Unitarian thing? I join you in that. But I guess what I'm trying to say and get us to think about, is it not a wishy-washy faith? It's based on really 4 very demanding and questioning principles that hold strong this faith. Do I have any answers? No. I have my own thoughts about it, and I do have some answers, and I think we do as a community. But I think it's always useful to return. What is it? What does it mean to be a Unitarian? Are those principles working well in our community? And maybe what we can do better. But for now, let's sing our third hymn, number 35, in the Purple Book, and we'll sing both verses. Thank you. So those of you that know me know that occasionally I get you to do some work when you come to church, hence why you've got 2 pieces of coloured paper. The following exercise is you can do it or not do it, because I also know there are some people who don't like doing these things. So everything that I invite of you this morning, you can choose to do it, or you can just allow the words to wash through you and think about our amazing structure. But let's come to a time of reflection. So I invite you just to settle yourself in your chair. If it's comfortable for you to close your eyes, do so. If not, maybe focus on the chalice. If sitting and being quiet is a real challenge, then it's also fine to stand and gently move around, if that helps you to get sort of settled and relaxed in your body. So do whatever it is that you need to do to feel sort of safe and here, present here. And you may just want to spend a moment with either your hand on your belly or your chest and just come back to the breath. You know, that great source of life, the invisible pillar that brings us the life force. And just feel the breath, feel the air coming in and out of your body, just for a moment. And maybe your attention of your feet on the floor, your connection to Mother Earth, all that comes from this beautiful planet that we receive on a daily basis. And the awareness of what is above may just be sky and roof, sun and clouds, or it may be spirit. Some of you may believe in a greater spiritual realm. It doesn't matter, it's just being aware that what's above us is also gives us those nurturing things that we need every day, the sun and the rain and the air and the clouds. And we come back now to our body in space in this church. And I would like you to think about what we've been exploring this morning, about these 4 principles, 4 pillars of the Unitarian faith. Now, if you're really new to this church, then, you might be going, I don't know, I don't understand. Don't worry, just don't worry. Just be relaxed in this process of reflection. But what I do invite you to do is have a think about those 4 pillars. The worth and dignity of each person. Justice and compassion. Acceptance and encouragement for spiritual growth. And a freedom to search for truth and meaning. If you are a regular to this church, I invite you to think about the strength of those in this congregation. There may be one that stands out stronger, as a stronger pillar than others. I just invite you to think about that. If you're new to this congregation, I invite you to think about coming to a church. What is the most important out of those 4 for you? What would you really want to see in action? So I'm going to say the 4 again, and then I'm going to just give us a little bit of time to ponder those. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice and compassion in our relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement in spiritual growth. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I invite you to stay in this space of very quiet reflection, but if you open your eyes, you may, hopefully near to you, there will be two coloured pieces of card. And I invite you to pick up the green one first, or the lighter coloured one first. The invitation for you is to come to the front. We have these 4 boards. If you can imagine that they're pillars, you might need some quite good imagination. Imagine that they're pillars. They've got the 4 principles, one on each of the board. And I invite you to place, if you're a member who's been around for a long time, I invite you to place your card where you feel the strength is in this church. What's the strongest pillar out of those 4 at this moment? And of course, it's your personal reflection. For those of you that are new, I invite you to look at these and place your card on the one that is most important to you coming into this spiritual space. So I invite you to come and do that now. Stuart, would you be able to play a little bit whilst people do that? Thank you. So when you're ready. And there's no name on them, so it's all anonymous, which is even better. Thank you. I want you now, whilst we're in this very quiet, reflective space, to think about, out of those 4, and again, if you're here for a long time, you can look at it from a place of you being part of the church. If you're new, then look at it from a place of where you would like to go. So you have a card which is red in colour. And in these next few moments, I invite you to come and place that card on a space, on one of these 4 pillars of where you feel your calling is, whether you feel that that's what I do really well. So what stirs you? What's your passion, your strength? What would you be as part of that cement in helping those pillars? So again, Stuart, can you play a little bit of music while we do that? Thank you. So I invite you to come, place your little red piece, And this is very much about your personal reflection of where you feel your strength, your call, or your calling is. And if you're new, it could be, where would you like to be most fed? Thank you. Let's come together in prayer. Loving God, Spirit of life, ever present in each of our lives, we sit together with this learning this morning, knowing that the pillars of our community have strengths and weaknesses. The strengths of our principles of the Unitarian faith, and the strengths and the longing and the calling of each individual member who is here and those of you who are at home. Spirit of life and love, God of grace, source of all things that changes us as we cannot change ourselves. We are a community of spiritual seekers, united by our conviction that the wounds of this world can be healed. And by healing, we do not mean restored to some mythical original purity, but brought to a new place with greater wisdom and wholeness. Spirit of life, God of love, we give thanks for this building, for those who came before us, who are here and come after us. We give thanks for those rebels who trod a new path. We give thanks for the pillars of our faith and of our own belief. Spirit of life, we ask for the courage as we've made these reflections in front of us this morning, where our calling is, where the need is, and what small commitment we can make. Amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Stuart. The last part of this service is completely unscripted because I didn't know what was going to happen. Hopefully you can see this. You'll be able to see it after the service. We'll keep it. We'll keep it for you to have a look at. What I find really fascinating is the parts that we saw that we were doing well was sort of relatively, two of them were relatively the same, and two were a little bit, and one was particularly like, oh, not much going on there. And I was like, I wonder which pillar that was outside. I hope it doesn't bode for the quinquennial review. But also, what was just so wonderful and magical about the whole process is when you were called to put down where you felt we needed to work or focus, or your calling was, or your need to want to change, it started to even things out a little more. And that, for me, is such a beautiful gift, because we can have an incredibly beautiful building, we can spend vast quantities of money making it look amazing, but actually it means nothing unless we have a community that are willing to look at the difficult questions and be willing to give of themselves. And so many of you do in this church already. You give huge amounts to this church. So I'm not saying that, oh, look, you can do more. Absolutely not. I would like you to do less, some of you. But there is a real hope in this landscape that we have all that we need, not only to continue the path of the pillars of our faith, but to create that stability in a community. Because one person doesn't hold up the whole church, just as one pillar doesn't hold up the whole building. Gosh, there was a lot of this in this service that we haven't got time. So we will have another service about this at another time. But what I invite you to do, this may have struck a chord within you. It may have made you think, oh, I want to learn more about Unitarianism. You may go away a bit more confused than when you came in. You may go away, I hope, thinking, yeah, actually, I want to learn a little bit more about that. Your calling may come in this church next week or in 10 years' time. Or your calling may come out in the community. But I'd like you to just make a mental note of what was important to you about this church and what was important to you about what you want to give or receive. And as we head towards a busy season, whether that's in work or gifting or relations or We're going to need all that we can, not only to sustain this church, but to sustain ourselves. So I invite you to remember yourselves in all of this. Remember your own pillars, your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual pillars. That's a little bit of homework if you're really up for it, to think about how well they're standing at this moment in time. Do you have a good foundation that you're standing on? You can take this service and, turn it into a service for yourself. How is your spiritual life? Are you looking after your body? How is your emotional health? Are you sharing what's on your mind? How is the mental strain of every day? Be kind, be balanced. Look after those 4 pillars. We finished this morning with a reading. Matthew's been so incredibly patient to wait till the end of the service to read it. But it is called Pillars, and Matthew's going to read it for us now.
Pillars. We are monuments, every one of us. I see before me men, women, children, and each one of us is a pillar upon which entire worlds were built. Too often I find this innate sense of guilt that stems from not becoming what we should have been. I've seen opera singers sell their vocal cords and take up vows of silence. I've seen warriors give up the art of violence and become holy men. I suppose everything will fall in doubt now and then, but we are pillars. But to hold up things bigger than ourselves. If any single one of us fails, our whole house grows weaker. We are the pillars that hold up the sky. We will all stand and we will all fall without really knowing why. But the moral of every story is hidden behind the words, like the forest behind the trees. I know we are all memories, but these are for you. Even if all they ever do is get you through this one day that then has paved the way for tomorrow.
Thank you, Matthew. Talking of pillars, I knew I'd get it in. I'd weave it in somehow. As you can imagine, a building of this size doesn't magically stand on its own. It takes care and attention. It takes cleaning, maintenance, love, singing to it. And a lot of that stuff takes money. So, Stuart, do you have a little bit of music you can play while I pass the collection round? I hadn't asked you, but I think trying to do a collection and a hymn can be tricky, maybe. Can you play a little bit? Yeah, okay, great. So we'll do a collection. If you have something to put in, that would be wonderful. In terms of cash, we have a little card machine, so you can do that afterwards, however small. And if you don't, please do not worry about it, because ultimately you are more important than your money. Thank you for your donations. We sing our last hymn together this morning, which is 198, and we'll just sing the first verse and the last verse. Thank you.